only at great risk. It involves the Black Luster Ritual, and 3 turns might not be enough.
Black Luster Ritual? What's that?
If I can draw the correct cards, you'll see soon enough.
Hello and welcome back to Audio Only, YouTube's least edited video series, where I just talk about whatever I want. And today's font is Play Fair Display Semi-Bold. Honestly, I'm personally a fan of Arial, and it doesn't look that much different. I don't know. I feel like the more of these I'll do, I'll hope to see more differences between the fonts that I use for the audio-only sign, but we'll play it by ear. Anyways, so today's video, we're going to be talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! And naturally, when you talk about the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, one of the first things that is brought up is how Yugi cheats. You see it all the time. You see Yugi naturally drawing the card he needs, or some sort of gibberish play like Yugi attacking his own spell card like the moon when he faces Mako. And there's definitely a lot of instances of Yugi doing stuff that is clearly illegal from the standpoint of how the game is played in real life or even within its own world. But there's one moment that I watched recently that I'm just like, this is the moment that I feel Yugi cheated the most. And I feel like before I get into it, I just need to give you some context, because you might not believe this is the biggest moment of Yugi cheating, because there's definitely other ones that are just way more obscene. Like when Yugi is dueling Panic, and he attacks the floating castle's flotation ring, but because Yugi played Swords of Revealing Light, the monster stays in play and is still floating, but because also Panic's played like the Dark Glimmer Shield or something, his monsters are trapped within, and then when the Swords of Revealing Light leave the field, his castle crashes in on all of his monsters, causing him to lose, or anything of that regard. But Season 1 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Isn't like any other season of Yu-Gi-Oh! Other players were also using these shenanigans. I stole that word from Tekken 101 because I really enjoy his Yu-Gi-Oh! Mystery series. If you like this kind of content, I'd recommend you check out his channel for those videos. But like there's all these shenanigans for both sides. Like when Yugi duels Mako, they're on a half water, half land field, and Mako uses fish monsters, and it's Mako who says, "You can't attack my monsters because they're underwater." And then when Yugi uses the moon spell card, he's like, because you have a moon and the moon controls the tides, now the water level rises. Not the effect of the card itself, nor was it the effect that Yugi wanted, but it was the effect that Mako was like claiming because the moon affects water, and water is ultimately like that. There's also other shenanigans, like in the duel with Mai, when she plays Shadow of Eyes, which forces all monsters into attack mode, but like phrases it as all men are forced to attack. Yugi summons Mystic Elf, and because Mystic Elf is a woman, she is allowed to stay in defense mode. In Season 1 of Yu-Gi-Oh!, you're not even allowed to attack directly. It's such a weird ruling, and I understand why, because there's only 2,000 life points. So if you don't actually have any monsters, you're going to lose that one turn, because I could literally summon a monster without tributing, and Blue Eyes would just instantly beat you. But it then begs the question, why would I ever summon a monster in defense mode if you just can't attack me directly anyways? But they always do, because what kind of boring game would people want to watch in the anime when someone's just like, I know I have Blue Eyes in my deck, but I don't have anything that beats over, I was talking about my earlier, Harpy's Pet Dragon, so I'm just going to not play anything until I draw Blue Eyes, and she just doesn't have any out to that. It's the insanity of everything with it. Obviously, I feel like I can't talk about Yugi cheating without the infinite wall of Karibos. Once again, it's multiply, and the way the card works in the game is that it sets up an infinite wall of Karibos in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Universe. And it's not like Yugi uses multiply again, I don't believe. So it's not like we ever get to see him use it in the retcon version of just summoning the 5 Karibo tokens by detonating a Karibo. So it's just, like, what is all this? Even with Kaiba, who honestly I feel like cheats less than everybody else. He uses Monster Reborn to bring back a Blue Eyes head of his ultimate dragon after Yugi attacked it, and it's like, oh, Blue Eyes has 3 heads, so you have to attack it 3 different times, and each time you just attack one of its heads, and one of its heads is equivalent to like a third of its power. But if I bring back Blue Eyes' head, he now is a full-on Blue Eyes, but just part of Blue Eyes' ultimate dragon. So all the shenanigans to say, first season of Yu-Gi-Oh, everybody cheats. It's not just Yugi, which is why, as bad as Yugi does cheat and because he's the main character, we see it the most. I don't believe we can really say any of those moments are the moment that Yugi cheats the most. The moment I believe that just proves Yugi is a cheater is when he summons Black Luster Soldier in his duel against Mai. And you're probably like, what's that supposed to do? Oh, he didn't have Black Luster Soldier in hand and only drew into Black Luster Ritual. So by that logic, he couldn't have summoned Black Luster Soldier. And I'm like, no, that's not the case, because the way rituals seemingly are is kind of how Thousand Dragon is. It's not a card that you need to have in your hand. It's an extra deck card, which I know Thousand Dragon's like the fusion of Baby Dragon and Time Wizard, but like he doesn't use polymerization for it. But overall, Yugi also does this again, where he summons Dark Magician of Chaos against Pegasus, and he doesn't know what the card is on the field. And he, in his hand, he might have the Dark Magician of Chaos, but I don't remember if he does. And he just flips it over, and it's like, this is the card Yugi saved from me, because they were switching between each other, so Pegasus couldn't read their minds. So whenever they set cards, at least, like Pegasus would still know what's in their hands, because he could read each of their minds individually, look at their hands, but then they just wouldn't know what cards they set, which honestly, I'm not sure if that really solves the problem, because Pegasus just constantly looks between the 2 minds. Then he knows which cards were in his hand originally, and now he can, I guess, from context clues, figure out what cards weren't, and you could see the other person's graveyard. Anyways, the reason Black Luster Soldier is the biggest cheat Yugi ever does is because of what Yugi says. So, for context, in this moment, when Yugi is dueling Mai, he is not using the Pharaoh, because he's scared of what the Pharaoh would do to win, as the Pharaoh is willing to attack Kaiba and win that duel, despite Kaiba literally saying, if you attack me, I'm standing on the ledge here, and because of these dual projectors that like you throw out and then bounce back to you, if it comes back to me, I might fall, and ultimately it would be on you. So Yugi doesn't want to do it, but the Pharaoh ends up being willing to attack in that instance. So he's like, I just can't trust the Pharaoh right now. Or I guess he doesn't even know it's the Pharaoh. Like, it's the spirit of the puzzle right now. So he's not letting him out. So essentially, Yugi is in complete control. He knows what every card in his deck is. He's playing. He probably deck built prior to the match. And then in the second part of the episode, or the second episode in the duel, they're like, how are we going to beat Harpy's Pet Dragon? It has 2,900 attack points. There's barely any monsters at this point that can beat it, besides maybe Ultimate Great Moth, Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, and Gate Guardian. There probably might be a few more, but those are like the main ones. Also Black Skull Dragon. So we're now stuck in this question of, how do we deal with this in Yugi and the Spirit of the Puzzle's mind? And they happen to be able to draw Swords of Real and Light, which stalls Mai for 3 turns to give them 3 turns to draw into Black Luster Ritual. But this is why the moment is so much, I want to say, bull, because the Spirit of the Puzzle is like, we have to use the risky play of getting the Black Luster Ritual. And Yugi is like, the Black Luster Ritual? What's that? He doesn't know what it is. He literally was in control the whole time. He clearly has to know what every card in his deck is, and we're supposed to believe that the Black Luster Ritual is in his deck, despite him not letting the Pharaoh out in between these matches. And then even if the Pharaoh came out while, let's say, Yugi was asleep or something, then he literally wouldn't have looked at his deck. And that's such a bad plan for a duelist. It's just ridiculous to believe that Yugi doesn't know what the Black Luster Ritual is, and it's implying that whenever the Pharaoh wants a card, he can will it into the deck, this is now different than the Heart of the Cards, which I kind of give somewhat of a pass to because of the balance of the Millennium items and how Yu-Gi-Oh! Spirits are alive. But you can essentially be like, I need to draw the out. Like, for instance, in the final duel between Yugi and Atem, he's like, I need 1,000 Knives because I know you have Marshmallow set there. He draws into it off the top of his deck and plays 1,000 Knives. I believe that's more realistic than manufacturing a card that doesn't exist in the deck prior to this point. And sure, Yugi does use a lot of one-offs at other moments, but in those other moments, he has time to prep before the duels, and Yugi knows what all the cards are. It's not the same situation anymore. So this is why it's just so much bull. It's just so ridiculous for me to believe that this card was in Yugi's deck. Also, ritual monsters, besides maybe Relinquish at that moment, sucked. Like, why would you ever summon a ritual monster besides, like, it's slightly stronger? In this case, you had to sacrifice a level 8 monster, or 2 monsters in Yugi's case, to summon one in an era where there is no tribute summoning. So literally in the same instance, Yugi might have had to sacrifice 2 cards from his hand, plus, hypothetically, Black Luster Soldier, if it was in his hand, to summon it down, while Kaiba could just summon Blue Eyes and fully match it with no effort. So yeah, this is the moment I believe that Yugi cheats the most overall. And I'd love to hear your opinions on this. If you believe this is when Yugi cheated the most, you might believe it's a moment later on in the series. You might believe it's a different Season 1 moment. But I believe when you factor in Heart of the Cards or Season 1 moments like everybody cheating, or like playing the rules differently than how we know them now, you can't blame Yugi for using some bullshit, even though some of his does seem more unbelievable than somebody saying, I set fire to the field. So now any monsters who are plant monsters would probably lose if I use Tremendous Fire. Versus like a wall of infinite Karibos that the opponent literally just can't get over. Besides maybe Raigeki, which just would destroy all monsters. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video and you want me to make more videos on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, on any of them, or like if you like any of my other videos, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any video ideas that you want me to discuss, I'm happy to hear about them, and if I'm interested in them as well, I'll give them a gander. And if you have any fonts that you really enjoy, that you want to see in audio only, I'm willing to make that much of editing to change the font between every episode. Thank you for listening, and peace out.